There are a wide range of barriers, but also enablers to safe and dignified menstrual health and hygiene, particularly for girls in schools. Girls need access to adequate products, services, and facilities to manage their periods. They need to live in an environment free of menstrual stigma and shame. And girls need to empower themselves through knowledge and skills to take menstrual management in their own hands. This is what we're all working for and what brings us together today. This year's conference puts innovation in these areas at the center of the discussion. We recognize that new ideas are needed to successfully address these challenges in an inclusive way and at scale. In the first session, we will focus on innovation in products, technologies, and finance. We will hear about a product innovation for the disposal of menstrual materials from Sri Lanka, then about a technology innovation to support girls with menstrual health management knowledge and skills from Mongolia and Indonesia. And we will conclude the session with hearing about research from the Pacific, looking into the financing of trade to improve the access to raw materials for making period products. Now, it is my pleasure to welcome the first speaker, who is a fellow sociologist today. Mr. Sunil Santashiri is Chief Sociologist at the National Water Supply and Drainage Board under the Ministry of Urban Development, Water Supply and Housing Facilities in Sri Lanka. He has been working at the ministry since 1992 and has a wealth of experience in the wash sector. Currently, under the Water Supply and Sanitation Improvement Project, Mr. Shantasiri is engaged in introducing MHM facilities in schools and public convention centers, implementing MHM programs in rural schools, and conducting hygiene awareness and MHM trainings. He holds a bachelor's and a master's degree in sociology, as well as an MSc in integrated water management. He has published a number of academic papers, and his main research interests are in water supply and sanitation. Mr. Shantasiri will present alongside Nilusha Patabendi. Mrs. Patabendi is currently UNICEF's WASH specialist in Sri Lanka. She has over 13 years of experience working in the WASH sector, including research, implementation, and evaluation of menstrual health and hygiene programs. Currently, she promotes MHM in schools as part of the WASH in Schools program and is a member of the National Coordination Committee for WASH, as well as other national and international forums. She holds a bachelor's degree in biological science and a master's of arts in development studies and public policy, and is currently pursuing a PhD in development studies and public policy. She has published in academic journals, and her main research interests are WASH, rural development, social exclusion, and gender. Jointly, they are presenting on the journey on the development of locally appropriate safe disposal systems for MHM facilities in schools in Sri Lanka, from open dumping to incineration. Over to you, Mr. Shantasiri.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all to giving this opportunity to share our experience with you all. Our study theme is development of locally appropriate safe disposal system for MHM facilities in schools of Sri Lanka. This is a joint assessment done by Mrs. Nilusha Patabendi and myself. Ms. Nilusha Patabendi is the WASH specialist, UNICEF Sri Lanka, and I'm Sunil Shantasiri, working as a chief sociologist, the National Water Supply and Drainage Board, Sri Lanka. When you talk about our study background, the lack of facilities for menstrual hygiene management in school, and lack of knowledge on menstrual hygiene influences on girls' education and their ability to face challenges during the menstruation. And the Ministry of Education has conducted a CAP study, CAP survey, in 2015 on school WASH program in Sri Lanka, and that report has revealed that less than half of adolescent girls have adequate knowledge about menstruation, including how it related to reproduction. And students discussing menstruation were not so positive. since more than half felt that this is wrong. The other challenges are access to materials, lack of assessment of disposal method practice within the country, and lack of social support and restrictive social norms. These are the challenges. There were three main objectives in our study. The first objective is to study appropriateness of local designs for safe disposal of sanitary napkins and provide recommendation for further improvement. The second objective is to identify the gaps, challenges, and opportunities in policy and programming, particularly in schools. The third objective is to recommend further strategies for scaling up and more comprehensive knowledge about MHA. Our stakeholders, the main partners, main stakeholders that involved in promoting MHA in Sri Lanka, they are the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Urban Development, Water Supply and Housing Facilities, National Water Supply and Drainage Board, UNICEF, Central Environmental Authority, Family Health Bureau. The MHM element as a part of hygiene, the sanitation and waste management falls under the mandate of above mentioned agencies. We consult all these organizations during our study as well. Then I cordially invite Ms. Nilusha Patamani from UNICEF Sri Lanka to carry on the rest of presentation from. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shantasiri. So I will continue the presentation from methodology onwards. So yeah, the slide is not moving. So let's have a try again. Okay. Yeah, I started. Yeah. The research method, so we had conducted a desk review, so which was mainly based on the local studies, the researchers and the project reports, and also mainly the study in the existing designs developed for schools by different agencies for sanitary napkin disposal, particularly the innovative designs developed by the group of engineers of the National Water Supply and Drainage Board, and they were assessed against the environmental friendliness and the cultural appropriateness, user friendliness, and the cost effectiveness. In addition to that, we conducted interviews with the sector partners and the project implementing staff of the related interventions and projects. And further interviews were conducted with the sector partners, project implementing field staff of the National Water Supply Board, particularly the WASI project, which stands for Water Supply, Sanitation and Improvement, funded under the World Bank. And this project is currently implementing in 7 districts of the country, and school wash is one of the major elements, including MHM. And the UNICEF technically contributed to the project by sharing technical designs developed and practiced earlier in schools on safe disposal of sanitary napkins, and also training school teachers on MHM as a part of the project. And the results, so the key findings of the review and the assessment are: there were a lot of issues in school before introducing the disposal method. So there are the open disposal and dumping sanitary napkins into the toilet, the pits, the girls' toilet pits. So they cause a lot of problems and issues related to environmental pollution and malfunctionality and the non-use of girls' toilet even within very short period of the construction. And girls discomfort during the menstruation. And as a solution to this problem, long time ago, the pit method as a very basic solution was introduced to schools for a safe the disposal of sanitary napkins for the first time. But that method requires another the other step, the secondary treatment options once the pit was filled. Then the incineration is introduced by the VASI project, the project that is implemented by National Water Supply and Drainage Board as an advanced solution and user-friendly method. But also it also requires other additional measures like further improvement to minimize the air pollution and the full burning of the sanitary napkins, complete burning. And the overall, it was decided that the multiple technical options are needed for different contexts. Further, the development of technology, the technical designs for safe and environmental friendly disposal is identified as an evolving process in the country. So this is the interior view of the incineration, and and the overall the process needs to be more the participatory with the involvement of different stakeholders from the different aspects such as health, education, waste management, gender and inclusion. And the monitoring and evaluation is also one of the key element of the project which was identified. And because further we identified that the involvement of users at the designing stage is very critical, and the development of feedback mechanisms for reviewing, monitoring and evaluation is needed, and that should be in place not only at the project level but also at the school level, zonal level, and the district and provincial and the national levels. And in this picture you can see the parents have visited those schools to see the MHM design attached to the girls toilets, and to the start that dialogue in between the children and their parents and teachers. And the joint monitoring process is needed to strengthen the ongoing efforts for development, advances, the technologies and adaptations. And the outcomes of the projects are: the project supported to scale up the MHM program among schools in those 7 districts. And application of MHM design and MHM facilities extended to public and common places such as temples, public bus stands and beyond the schools. So the women friendly space concept was promoted among the public and common places such as the including other women friendly options along with the MHM facilities. So the examples are providing separate space for women to rest and the breastfeed children and change and they clean themselves, and those facilities were attached to the women toilets and the washroom areas. So this was built up with the project ideas. And the building upon on those interventions and experiences, the National Water Supply and Drainage Board and UNICEF together was able to advocate the Ministry of Urban Development, Water Supply and Housing Facilities to develop national guideline for MHM. For that purpose, Ministry has formed a multi-sectoral and the multi-stakeholder technical working group at the national level. So at the same time, we faced challenges as well, because some of those challenges are lack of comprehensive national strategy for MHM and lack of coordination among multiple partners, because it's a subject that belongs to number of ministries, and lack of fund allocation for MHM promotion under the national budget lines of education, sanitation and water supply, and lack of attention from decision makers and the policy makers on the importance of MHM and how it impacts on well-being of adolescent girls and the quality of education. Lessons learned. So the lessons learned out of this project are evidence-based advocacy, development of compelling cases, at the ground level and sharing successes at national forums help to draw the attention of decision makers and the policy makers. And the inclusion of MHM in local policies strengthen the scaling up of the program and fund allocation for MHM, because MHM was included in the revisions of national sanitation policy. Earlier it was not included. The break in the silence is very much needed through the involvement of men at every level, from school level, from ground level up to the national level, to boost the MHM programs. Next steps. So we recommend that the certain steps to go ahead with this process and our efforts. So improve the safe disposal methods and MHM designs further. Improve the quality of MHM material, mainly the IEC material, and integrate with the behavior change communications component as well, and coordinate with universities for knowledge generation, technology transferring and sharing. Further bridge the gap between the technology development and transferring new knowledge for the development. Develop a comprehensive MHM guideline at national level leading to the MHM policy. So that is the ultimate goal of the project and those who are involved in this whole exercise. The further recommendations to fill the existing gaps in the MHM program, the creating an enabling environment for relevant discussions from user to policymaker, introduce locally appropriate and affordable technologies, collaborate between multi-stakeholders for scaling up the program. So this is the end of the presentation. So I would like to give my special thanks to Mr. Shantasiri for his great support for this assessment and review, and also my colleague Radhika, who is one of the co-author of the paper, for her work on MHM in promoting MHM in schools and contributed to the training of teachers under this project. Thank you. Thank you for all. Over.
Thank you very much for these great insights into how Sri Lanka is addressing safe disposal of menstrual materials in schools. This is really, this has sparked a lot of questions on Slido. Just a quick reminder before we answer these questions. If you see one of your questions already being asked, please like the question of the other person instead of submitting a new question, so we know which questions are of everyone's interest. I would like to start, maybe there's a set of questions around safety, maintenance, and coordination. So safety, are there any recommended standards currently for incineration to ensure health and safety or users in schools? And then the question around maintenance, how are these incinerators maintained? Who is responsible for that, and how is that organized? And then Mr. Shantasiri mentioned in the beginning there are 6 national government bodies that are involved in menstrual hygiene management in schools. How does the coordination work, and how did you manage to get menstrual hygiene management up on the agenda as an urgent issue to address? Over to you.
Answering to some of the questions. The operation and maintenance is one of the element that we need to address, and also for the standards are not available at the country right now. So as a solution, what we did was we've convinced the Ministry of Water Supply and the urban development and water supply to form a national the working group, the technical working group at the national level, consisting Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, mainly the Central Environmental Authority, who was not in the whole process and the conversation from the beginning, because they brought this their expertise and the experience, because they are the one who is developing standards for these technologies to minimize their pollution. So during that discussion, so they presented some of the models that was practiced in other countries. So this is the way forward. So we need to improve to minimize the improve the model and to minimize the pollution. So at this moment, so we are not using this model for us in school with large number of students, and the O&M is also one of the key the thing that we need to consider, and that discussion is also going on. So we have to think about how we can include this in the current the O&M plan of school wash programs. Thank you.
Also, quarterly, the national steering committee is established in the country, that is organized by our ministry, urban development and water supply. That forum, they represent all agencies I mentioned in the presentation, and quarterly they are discussing these things and get some decisions, policy decisions, and some introduce some strategies, innovations. At the school level, there is a school health club that is representing the school, the parents, teachers, and the school children. They have the maintenance plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have quite a lot of questions coming in for you, so this is great. Thank you very much for all the really interesting aspects that participants have questions about. There's a second set of questions about what menstrual materials the girls are using in school. So are they disposable pads, or tampons, or cups? So if you could maybe reflect on that. And also there's a question about environmental friendliness, and whether you have also looked at other alternatives to incinerations, and maybe you can give us a little bit of an insight what technologies you've considered, and why in the end you ended up with incineration.
The current the mature material are the sanitary napkins, but in our country the other materials are not available widely in the market, but mostly it's sanitary napkins and sometimes clothes, so mainly in the rural areas. So that was the traditional practice. And other than that, it's mainly we don't have the students don't use tampons mainly. And also the schools, we have two basic designs right now, the dry pit method and the incinerator. Then dry pit method is a method that the used sanitary napkins is the put into the pit, and it's not mixed up with anything, and it's closed and dry. So once the pit is get filled, so we need to go for the secondary level treatments, maybe the further degradation. So and to overcome this problem, so this the incinerators were introduced. But again, this particular designs also need further improvements, because the incineration needs the burning at high temperature. So when it's practiced at the large scale, so we need to think those things. So that's why we already started our discussions with one of the leading the universities, mainly the engineering faculties of the country, Central Environmental Authority, and SLSI, the Sri Lanka, the Institute for Standards. So we are planning to go ahead with these discussions to overcome those challenges. Over.
Great, thank you very much. I have maybe one last set of questions about the involvement of different stakeholders. So you mentioned your feedback from the girls and the users were really important in the process. You also mentioned that you involved the girls in the design of the process, and there's a question about how and to what extent is private sector involved in the solution. If you can reflect on those, and that would be the last set of questions to you, and we'll move on to the next presentation.
Yeah, because I can give the answer by having one example, because when you have additional structures for the MHM, so it's visible. So then because after the system was introduced, and before introducing the special designs for MHM, we had the consultations with adolescent girls in schools and teachers, sometimes even the male teachers as well, school principals. So one because we got a lot of the feedback from children, because from the children's perspective, from the girls perspective, they don't like to have their identity during the menstruation. So then when they use this particular the special toilets with special designs, they will be identical during menstruation. So then they requested to remove those things, and to ensure they are not identical when they use the latrines. And so especially when we design the girls latrines, so based on the comments and the feedback, some of the engineering designs were changed in a way girls are not identical when they use those the special toilets. So this is one of the examples how we incorporate their comments from the beginning and even after the project over.
Mr. Shantasiri, would you like to add anything else, or shall we move on?
Yeah, I think is in the schools there is a school health club that is to present the adolescent girls and boys. There during the planning and design, we are consulting them with that available designs, and we aware them. And after that, they are the trained students. They are giving the messages to their juniors and the others.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing your insights from Sri Lanka, Mr. Shantasiri, Ms. Nilusha Pantabendi. This has been really interesting, and there were a lot of questions around the technicalities. So for everyone, if you want to discuss this topic further, please refer you to the YAMA group, which Brock has kindly shared in the Slido chat as well, and it's also in the what we've presented here. Please continue this discussion on YAMA